Hi friends, today I'm going to discuss very important topic, that is how to read medical report for the legal purposes. What happens that in criminal law we practice and we are confronted with certain situations in which a person has been attacked and he has sustained some injuries. Now, the injury may be simple, injury can be grievous, and injury due can be also due to the negligence. But how we are going to decide unless we understand the writing of the doctor who has written something in the legal? So there are certain abbreviations which are used by the doctor, and also we have to understand that what kind of the medication that person has prescribed. Now you will, so being a lawyer and being an advocate, why should I understand the medication? No, I think that we have to have some understanding of the medication as well. For example, there are certain cephalosporins. These are the antibiotics beta lactam which is prescribed by the doctor for the sake of improving or treating curing infections. Then there are fluoroquinolones. The fluoroquinolones like ofloxacin, ciprofloxacin, levofloxacin. There are certain problems which are by the infection, bacterial infection, viral infection, and some diseases are also transferred by one person to another. For example, the section 319 of the IPC very categorically states that whoever causes injury or disease or infirmity, so if you are causing injury, injury could be superficial or could be grievous. Now it is, how are you going to decide unless you know that what kind of the injury has been caused? For example, it could be by very blunt weapons, it could be by sharp weapons. You can receive abrasion, you can receive bruise, you can receive laceration, you can receive any other problems, superficial injury or grievous. But you have to understand that, for example, if the cephalosporin has been prescribed by the doctor, it could be first generation, second generation, third generation, fourth or fifth generation. Now you don't have to delve deeper into that, or which generation does this belong. But you have to understand that if the cephalosporin has been prescribed, then the person must be suffering from UTI, RTI, that is urinary tract infection or the respiratory tract infection. Now, fluoroquinolones can be monocyclic, bicyclic, tetracyclic, etc. Like these fluoroquinolones are also prescribed when the person is infected with gram-negative, positive areas. Now, I'm not saying that you have to be a scientist or and a doctor in that particular field, but unless you know that, yes, suppose the person is in deep pain and the person has been prescribed diclofenac sodium and paracetamol, serratiopeptidase, unless you know that these medications are prescribed. Sometimes it is also used for example, the doctor prescribed to take it, and OD means once in a day, BD means binary in a day, yani ki two times in a day, TD thrice in a day, QD four times in a day. Sometimes suppose that the quick result is required, you have to have the parental route. What is the parental route? Means it must be intravenous, and there are certain abbreviations which are also used by the doctors which you have to decipher. Then only you can argue before the concerned court that the person has been inflicted this pain, if that is intentional. I'm not asking about discussing right now about the mens rea. We are focusing mainly on the actus reus, that is the physical act itself. Suppose the injury is visible, sometimes the injury is not visible, but there may be dislocations as well. But you have to understand first that what are the abbreviation used by the doctors and what is the meaning of that. Because see, these are certain abbreviation. For example, BIBF or P, yani brought in by police or for family, you have been brought by. For example, you can also say brought in by ambulance, BIBA. Then you have the in vitro. Suppose there is in vitro. For in vitro, it means that in laboratory. Suppose that some test has been done in laboratory and the result has been out. Sometimes that in vitro fertilization also. Those people who are not able to deliver the baby in vivo, they are deliberately choosing this. Exact opposite is in vivo, means in living organisms inside the womb. not in the test tube baby like in vitro fertilization. Then you have the parental route, that IM, that is intramuscular. Intramuscular. You know the route. Parental route. Now we don't know the parental route means intravenous, subcutaneous, directly in the skin, because the situation demand quick result, and at that time parental route is required and not the oral route. Means there are the two routes. Parental route is directly intravenous. For example, the C4 types injection has been injected so that the person can recover quick, and suppose that the infection is very long. So the bacterial infection can be treated by parental route. Because see, AKA, we know AKA, that is also known as thereafter certain prescriptions, like see, for example, the MX, EX, DX, HX. These are like, this is medication, this is prescription, this is diagnosis, this is history. They are writing in a rough way and we have to decipher it. For example, they can also say, you know, OD, BD, which I've already discussed. So these are the things which you have to understand, that what kind of the weapon has been used, what kind of the injury has been caused by the person. Is it simple injury? Is it because the negligence? Then suppose that the person has died in a very unusual situation or very suspicious condition. Then section 174 and 176 of the IPC, sorry, CRPC is very relevant in this case, in which it has to be ascertained that what was the cause of the death, because the person has been found lying somewhere and the police has discovered the corpse. Now the corpse has to be sent to morgue, so that the post-mortem could happen. Now there is a difference between the post-mortem and autopsy report as well. In the post-mortem, the person on the open way examine his the body physically from outside without opening the cavities. But in the autopsy report, what happens, that entire cavities are opened, sees the doctor ascertains whether the rigor mortis has set in, and if it has set in, what was the cause of the injury inside the visceral organ. The viscera report, we say that viscera report means what was inside. We also know USG. You know that ultrasound, and sometimes we say CRXT, yani chest X-ray. So all these things we have to understand. What was the report? Was there any privations? Was there any dislocation? The wound was what kind of the wound was? It oblique? Used by the notch kind of the weapons, or sharp weapons or blunt weapons? Has the person received simple injury or the grievous injury? Or even in the post-mortem, it has to be ascertained that whether the person died due to only this one, or because of the septicemia or infection caused due to the first injury. Some people are directly intentionally coming into contact with you because they know it very well that I can transmit this disease which I'm infected with. So that is also kind of the simple hurt which you are causing to the person intentionally, deliberately. You are coming in contact with that person, so you are also committing that wrong. It can, and you can be booked for 279 IPC. Sometimes there is a difference of opinions between the simple hurt in this way and the 279 or 319 IPC. So, my dear friends, what I want to say, that you must understand the nature of the injury caused by the weapons used. Then you have to understand in which situation the person received or sustained the injury, by which how much time the ambulance took to come, or the police took to brought the person to the hospital, and was the opportunity available for him to come earlier, and what was the intervenom period, that during that period, suppose that because of the injury or the disease or infirmity caused owing to late coming from that place. Or sometimes what happens, that the medication which has been prescribed itself is a great proof that the person received the injury, but there is no visible injury, but the kind of the medication which cephalosporin or the fluoroquinolones and the antibiotics, anti-emetic, antipyretic, what kind of the medication has been prescribed by the doctor, that also give you a good indication that the person is suffering from deep pain. So all these things has to be understood before we conclude that this particular section of the IPC will be applicable in this case. The injury is simple or the grievous, or the person got the injury due to the negligence of the person, was the intention applicable. So all these things are going to be concluded only before you decipher, only when you decipher all these things which has been written by the doctor, that AOE is, for example, the age, height, and place, etc. So they are writing in the abbreviations. For example, in fact, they are not going to say psychologist, they are merely giving you the symbol, and you have to understand that this is psychologist, psychiatrist. And guys, that the difference between the psychiatrist and psychologist, there is a very major difference. Psychiatrists are those who have gone through the medical education, and they may be MD or MBBS. They have accumulated that knowledge, and therefore they are empowered to prescribe medications. Whereas the psychologist can merely prescribe you the behavior therapy or other kind of the modification of the behavior, but they are not authorized to prescribe the medicines. So that's it for today, and thank you very much for listening, guys. Once again, I will come up with the same subject in a very great detail, and till that time, thank you very much. Have a good day, and bye bye.